What's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new story. Today we have a pretty crazy story of the subscriber who accidentally caught these two people doing something that they really shouldn't be doing in the school bathroom. The guy threatens Brian to be silent. However, someone else tells on him, so this guy basically threatens to beat Brian up, and it has a really crazy ending, so you're going to want to watch all the way until the end. Leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing, and let's just jump right into it. So we're going to call a subscriber who submitted this story Brian. And every single day in high school, Brian would go into class, he would clock in, and he would clock out. He would basically just be going through the motions. He really didn't like high school, but he also wanted to make sure he got his high school diploma, as that was going to be necessary for what he wanted to do next. So every single day, he would go in, and he would basically just deal with it. He would just deal with whatever was happening. He would just have to grit his teeth and deal with it. And school was hard enough already. He wasn't a fan of, like, most of the people there. Thought the social cliques and stuff and all those kind of, like, the drama was super stupid, so he stayed out of it. He thought a lot of his classes were dumb, and he didn't really like the work. So honestly, he was just like, you know what, man? I'm just gonna, like, I just got to get through it. However, there was one thing in one of his classes that honestly just made his days worse. Every single day, it was always a thing, it was always present, and it always just made it worse. And in Brian's mind, it was extremely unnecessary. So Brian would always sit in the back of class. And in one of his classes, in fact, his first period class, so remember, his school started promptly at 8. Meaning he had to get up real early, and he was really not feeling it, right? At 8 in the morning, your tolerance for anything or anyone after, like, you don't have a cup of coffee, you just woke up when you didn't want to wake up. You don't really have a high tolerance for nonsense. I don't know if you guys can agree with that or relate. I know I definitely can. But anyways, didn't have a high tolerance for nonsense. And there was a lot of nonsense that was going on. Specifically, these two people. So there was a guy and a girl. And we're just going to call them the couple, and I'm just going to call the guy and the girl the girl. There will be no other the guy or the girl, so you won't need to worry about me mixing them up in the future. But these two would sit in the back where Brian would sit. Brian would sit in the back because he didn't want to deal with it, and he knew that sitting in the back would give him the best chance or the best opportunity to kind of space out or to power through the day, especially at such an early morning time. These two, though, the couple, they would sit in the back of class so that they could get away with just being all romantic and on each other and super PDA, right? Super PDA in class. They would do it just to try and get away with that. And unfortunately, that meant that Brian had to sit right next to the couple as they did everything that they would do. So, for example, on a random day, Brian would come into class early in the morning, be super groggy, doesn't even want to do it. You know, he's just like, oh, man, I really don't even want to do this, bro. Like, man, whatever. And all of a sudden, during that morning, he would just hear this sucking sound. Not, okay, stop getting sus. It's not that weird yet. Kissing sound, which kind of sounds like a, kind of like, I'm not trying to be too weird, but like, you guys already know, right? You guys already know how that sounds. Just kind of like the really loud tongue kissing sounds. And here's the thing. You can go ahead and do what you want to do. That's totally fine. That's totally fair. However, please do it in the privacy of your own whatever, unless you're at some kind of party or something, and it is almost socially acceptable, especially as the night goes on, for a little bit of that to be happening. You know, at the end of the day, I can understand and respect that because that's part of the social cues of the event. But in the back of a classroom, bro, I'm really not trying to do that. And also, the other thing is, like, it's 8 in the morning. It's in the middle of class. Brian is already pretty unhappy that he has to be there in the first place. So just the fact that almost every single day, these two would be like loudly making out and also doing it when they wouldn't get caught. They would wait for the teacher to turn around and then they go, they would just like, they basically baby bird food into each other's mouths. It was gross. It was really gross. And Brian, it just made his day worse every single day. And if they weren't, like, doing that, they would be, like, whispering little cute things or whatever into each other's ears. And the thing is, Brian was unfortunately close enough that he would always hear it. And it would be the most, like, disgusting stuff ever. Not, like, vile. It would just be so annoying. It'd be like, I love you, my sweet pea. Oh, I love you, my prince. It'd be stuff that just makes her, like, you know, it's stuff that, like, you're not trying to start the day with, especially with people you don't like. Honestly, like, whenever, like, that stuff happens to you, it's great. but whenever it happens to anyone else, it is like the most revolting, annoying, just unnerving stuff you've ever heard of. I don't know if you guys can relate. I know I definitely can relate to that. So this story really all starts one day, and the day started like any other day. However, the couple would occasionally, every once in a while, they would ask to go to the bathroom, not at the same time, but the guy would ask, and then 2 minutes later, the girl would ask, or vice versa. So it wasn't super suspicious, but Brian knew that they were going to see each other, whatever, in class. So this all happened. It was one of these days, and the couple was, like, excused to go to the bathroom. Brian was sitting there, and he's like, oh, shoot, I really got to pee. So he raises his hand. He doesn't even think about the fact that this couple is in the bathroom right now, or he didn't even think that they went to the bathroom. He honestly thought that they just went outside because they'd be gone for like 30 minutes. It was such a large class, and the teacher was kind of one of those teachers who would be like, if you want to mess around and flunk out, that's not my problem. But if you want to learn, I'll definitely be there for you. So the teacher really didn't care when kids just didn't show up or decided to leave. Sometimes, he would be like, okay, they either don't want to learn or they actually have to do something, which is important, and I don't feel like getting into everyone's personal information and personal business. Teacher was pretty cool like that. So anyways, Brian raised his hand to go to the bathroom. His teacher's like, it's all good. He walks over, walks down the hallway, opens up the bathroom door, and he goes into the stall, right? So there's 2 stalls, and, he just immediately, autopilot, goes into one stall. He lifts up the toilet seat and begins to pee, right? And that's when Brian starts to realize, he starts to acknowledge his surroundings a little bit. He starts to understand what is going on around him. He kind of made a grave mistake because in the stall next to him was not one pair of feet, right? It was 2 pairs of feet. Well, 2 pairs of shoes, I should say. They're not raw dogging it in the, oh, no. I meant that okay, context. I'm sorry. I've heard people say raw dogging it when they mean walking around in bare feet. I don't mean it oh God, I'm always saying sus stuff, which this video is pretty sus, so whatever. But anyways, yeah, they're wearing shoes. And that's when Brian realizes that there are actually 2 people in the stall next to him, and one pair of shoes is pointing towards the other. So Brian already knows that, this is he's not going to say anything. He's not going to get involved. This is clearly a situation where he really doesn't feel like, getting into anything. And I'm definitely not going to go too deep into specifics into what was happening, but just assume that they were up to something that they probably shouldn't be up to on school campus or school grounds, or really in general. I mean, not in general. You can do what you like. I really don't care. But definitely not something that you want to be doing on school grounds. So Brian acknowledges this and is like, okay, I'm just going to pee. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. I might not even wash my hands because I just want to get out of here as quickly as possible. And yeah, so let's just focus on finishing the job at hand, aka taking a whiz, and then we will go. So Brian thinks that he's out of the clear, he's in the clear right now. He thinks he's good, finishes up, zips up his pants, and he opens the stall only to hear, hey, coming from the other stall. Some guy in the other stall yells at him, hey, well, one of the 2 people in the stall, right? And he freezes for a second because this is very kind of unnerving and weird. And he sees the stall door open up. And sure enough, the guy from the couple walks out. And Brian takes a little look and he sees that the girl from the couple is also in the room. And the guy from the couple's like, hey, kid, wait, you're from my class, right? Brian's like, yeah, first period, history. Yeah, I'm in that class. He's like, yo, you better not tell anyone about this. I will seriously make your life difficult if you tell anyone about this, bro. And I don't know about you, but I've always hated when people immediately resort to I'm going to threaten you to stay silent. It's okay, first of all, in my experience, most people don't want to cause problems. Most people don't want to create a situation. You know what I mean? I just feel if most people saw something, they wouldn't say anything. And fair enough, there's 10% of kids who definitely would be I got to uphold the law, man, or whatever, right? But in the most case, if the guy says, if you just ask politely, yo, can you not say anything about this? And they say, sure, you don't have to be or I'm gonna stab you at the middle of the night. Bro, chill out, dude. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just being maybe I'm just not cynical enough. Maybe that's the case. I really don't know. But anyways, Brian kind of looks at him and is like, dude, we're good. I'm not going to say anything. And he kind of walks up to Brian and he's got his big old chest out or whatever. And he's not even that big of a kid, but he's definitely a sketchier, more intimidating kid Brian doesn't want to have a fight or beef with anyone, but this is definitely not a kid that Brian would be wanting to have anything not go well with, right? This is definitely a kid that Brian wants to keep things in check. And the kid says again, like, I just got to reiterate, man, if word gets out or if we get caught because you're telling on us, life's going to be difficult at 8 in the morning every single day for you. And not even then, life's going to be difficult outside of then. And Brian says again, look, I seriously don't want any trouble. I just came in to take a pee, and I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to go back to class. I'm not going to say a word. So the kid's like, all right, man, that's cool with me. See you in class. So Brian goes over, washes his hands, is thinking to himself, of course this is my luck. Of course this is my luck. The last thing I want to do is to get into anything with anyone, I just want to stay clear of everything, right? And of course, obviously, clearly, right? I run into this guy doing something with his girlfriend that he doesn't want anyone to know about. And yeah, he confronts me. And, Brian's thinking to himself, it's pretty funny that Brian thinks about this. But he thinks to himself, they're going to get caught randomly and they're going to blame it on me, like 100%. Because these two were not being discreet about it. Look, if you're going to do this, just go somewhere else. Don't do it at school. But even if you're going to do it at school, the school bathroom, seriously, like you're really going to do in the school bathroom, the school stall. It's not even like one of those individual bathrooms where you can lock it or whatever. This is the public bathroom that people walk in and out of like all the time. So the fact that like you don't expect anyone to randomly walk by. And the thing is too, Brian didn't even say, oh, what's going on in there? He literally just came in to use the bathroom. I honestly wonder if the guy, like, in the relationship went out and, like, intimidated literally every kid that walked into the bathroom while they were there. I honestly can't imagine that they would get anything too productive, quote-unquote, done in there if he had to interrupt every 45 seconds when someone would walk in. So anyways, Brian walked back to class. And class was kind of long. It was like an hour-long class, but that was about the average length of his class. But while he was sitting there, he noticed that the guy and the girl never came back. And at first, he really doesn't think anything of it because, they've done this before. Sometimes when they ask to go to the bathroom, they'll be back within 20 minutes. Sometimes they won't even come back at all, and they'll pick up their stuff, like, after school. So Brian really wasn't, like, too shocked that they didn't come back. Or at least not shocked. He just didn't think anything of it, which something did happen. So anyways, when Brian gets home, right, Brian is like he's tired, had a long day of school, wasn't really feeling it. First of all, it was a bad start to the day. The rest of the day didn't go that much better. Just gets back home, is about to start his work when he just like goes on his phone. And he sees he's got an Instagram message. And, Brian isn't that like popular kid. He isn't like super active on Instagram either. He also has 0 posts on his account. And he hasn't followed anyone, and he doubts that anyone's going to follow request him because he doesn't talk to anyone. So he's really confused why he has a notification on his Instagram. And he goes over, and he sees he has a message request. And he looks at the profile, and the profile pic is very clearly the guy that sits in the back of class who's always sucking his like girlfriend's face off every day. So he's really confused why this kid sent him a message. And he opens up the message, and it's like, I told you not to tell on us, bro. You're dead. And he's just like, what? It's just like, what? And he keeps reading the message. And he's like, you're dead when we're back in a week, ... So at this point, Brian is super confused. And I don't know if he wants, he's thinking about this right now. He's like, do I respond to this kid? Do I ignore it? What does he mean when I see you in a week? Like, school's tomorrow, man. Like, can you not count? Do we need a reminder of how many hours are in a week? P.S. It's not 24 hours in a week. That's in a day. So Brian was pretty confused. So he kind of just sent a question mark back because at this point, that's genuinely all he could muster out is just a question mark of just, what are you talking about right now? Because he genuinely had no idea what he was talking about right then. Because he's like, what? Like, seriously, what? So the kid, eventually reads it and responds basically saying, like, thanks to you telling on us, we're suspended for a week. Just so you know, when we get back, I'm going to make your life a living hell like I said I would. So Brian immediately types like, dude, I didn't tell on you. And the kid's like, yeah, right. 5 minutes after you leave a teacher comes in saying that there was a report of suspicious activity in the bathroom and suspends us both for a week. Yeah, right, buddy, ... And Brian responds like, look, it wasn't me, and I guarantee you that it was just like one of the other kids who must have gone in the bathroom during that time. And, the guy responds like, no, it definitely was you since this happened after you. Which the logic there is pretty flawed because that implies that they're probably, like, he didn't deny that, because, like, if there weren't other kids walking into the bathroom during that time period, the guy would have said, you were the only one in the bathroom. Which even then, like, are you sure that he was the only one? Whatever, right? The fact that he said, oh, it happened after you, therefore it was you, it's pretty stupid because what if there's a kid in there, probably was, like 2 minutes earlier before Brian, it probably just took him longer to go and tell on someone. Like, it makes literally no sense. And Brian honestly tries to argue this for a second. He's like, dude, it was probably just someone before me, and they just came in after me. But this kid was so dead convinced that it was Brian that he literally left a message on scene. He didn't even, like, try and respond. So now Brian is like, okay, great. My life is awesome right now. I have to go to school, which I hate, every single day for the week. And now, in a week from now, I'm going to have to deal with this kid trying to beat my ass. Really? Like, this is really how it's going down right now? Is this seriously my life? Okay. So anyways, he's in class. And for the next week, Brian is just like, kind of just like uncomfortable, pretty nervous. Because the days tick down as like when this kid won't be suspended again. And eventually, it's the day where he's back. So Brian gets into class, and Brian always gets to class early-ish. He's not early because he's super excited to be bright and early and ready to face the day. No, he just gets there early anyways because, like, he takes the bus, and the bus drops him off kind of early just to make sure that they get everyone's stops right or whatever. So he just happens to be there early, and he's sitting there. And honestly, he should have sat in the front of the room, but I think Brian, like, it was too early for his brain to function. So he really was just letting it run on autopilot. So he sat in the back of the room, and people started coming to class. And that's when the guy and the girl come into class. And that's when Brian immediately remembers, oh yeah, this kid thinks that I told on him and got him suspended for a week, and he's intending to beat my ass after school. Great. So the kid sits down, and normally the guy and the girl sit near Brian, but they're always like a couple seats separated, because it tends to be the back of the classroom is like the least densely populated, so there's always like a lot of empty chairs. So while Brian sits near the couple normally, they normally give him like 2 to 3 desks worth of space because they're not trying to be near anyone by what they're doing, right? And so this time, the guy sits right next to Brian. So he immediately knows that, like, this is not good. This guy has not forgotten about what he said, probably doesn't have a great long-term memory, but unfortunately, he remembers this one. He remembers saying that he's definitely going to beat me up, right? So sure enough, the kid taps Brian on the shoulder, and Brian just grimaces and just prepares himself because he's like, Brian, man, I have no idea what's coming. Like, we know it's bad, but it could be such a range of bad things. So he turns around and he kind of looks at the kid. He's just staring at the kid. And the guy's like smiling a little bit. He's like, sup, buddy? Look who's back after a week. Like, did you miss me? And Brian just tries to reason with this guy again. He's like, dude, I'm telling you, why would I tell? Like, what benefit for me why would I tell? Like, tell me, why would I do it? How would it benefit me? Why, like, logically, why would I do it? And the kid's like, dude, I don't know. It was a pretty bad decision on your part. That's all I know. And Brian's like, dude, that's because I didn't do it. And, okay, he doesn't say it with that much, like, attitude. He was way too tired and also not trying to make this guy more mad than he is. And this guy leans over and he just whispers into Brian's ears. He's like, hey, man, after school today, I'm going to make your life a living hell. And Brian's like, oh, no. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment, what should you comment down below? Comment bathroom down below. That'll be the secret word of the day. Comment bathroom down below. I'll try and heart a bunch of those comments. I'm pretty busy today, so I can't guarantee anything. Also, these stories are on Spotify. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you want to submit a story to me, submit it to either my Twitter or Instagram DMs. I'll be reading them from there. This was a subscriber-submitted story. Finally, the best way to support the channel is to, one, finish watching this video all the way through the end, which there's a pretty crazy plot twist at the end, so you definitely want to watch. But then also, the second best way is after you're done with this video, just watch another one of my story videos. A really easy way to do that is my pinned comment down below will have a link to my Storytime playlist, which is a playlist of all my stories, which makes it really easy to watch them in large quantities, aka binge watch the videos. With that all being said, let's get back to it. So for the rest of class, right, Brian was sitting there super uncomfortably because he could just feel this kid, the guy, staring at him, staring him down. Basically like, I don't know, predator staring down his prey before he pounces, right? So Brian, he's pretty uncomfortable, right? And the bell rings, so class is over, and Brian gets up really quickly. And he rushes out to the door, and that's when he's stopped by the guy. The guy's like, "Why are you going so fast, man? Like, you can't run away from me forever. I'll see you at the end of the day. I know what class you have then. I'll meet you then." So Brian just like, that's what freaks Brian out. He's already like kind of messed up about the whole, I don't know, this kid's going to come and like get me type thing. But he gets really messed up when this kid says, "I know what class you have." Because Brian was hoping that, like, he would be in his last period class, he would have all this stuff together, and he would just book it towards, because he walks back home, that he would just book it or a little bit early or something like that, be super quick, be super efficient, and just basically sprint back home. Because he takes the bus there, but he walks back. For some reason, like, the bus only runs one way, so it's literally a 20-minute walk for him back, which is not that fun. In theory, he could walk there in the mornings, but he just does not have the energy at 7 in the morning or whatever to do that. So Brian's just sitting in his lap. So Brian's kind of just like sitting there at lunch, thinking to himself, now what am I about to do? Like, how should I go about this that isn't going to screw myself over? You know what I mean? And Brian's like, okay, what should I do? All right, Brian, let's get ourselves together. What are we going to be doing in this situation? How are we going to be going about this? And Brian comes to the conclusion that he's going to have to skip his last period class. And at this school, you got punished pretty bad if you skipped classes. Like, you had like 3 strikes and then you're on like some kind of probation or something. It was bad news. And Brian already had 1 strike against him, so he would have to eat up another strike. And Brian was already thinking to himself, this is not a long-term solution too, because he can't keep on skipping his last period class. 1, the guy would probably catch on, and 2, after doing it 1 more time, he would be on academic probation and be a huge issue. He'd stay after school or stuff like that, so then it would just be bad news, right? But he just thinks, like, today, I just need time to figure this out. So Brian is deciding that he is going to skip his last period class. So Brian decides, he's like, okay, gets his stuff together. Instead of going to his last period class, instead, like, he gets out of his second to last period class, instead of turning right where his class is, he makes a left towards the door. And he's like, all right, I'm going to get home early, but if my mom's there, I'm just going to wait outside for a little bit so it doesn't seem suspicious. And yeah. So he makes a left. He gets out of his second to last period class. He gets out, makes a left, and starts kind of like walking very casually because he doesn't want to seem like he's bolting out of there. Because he doesn't want a teacher being like, where are you going or whatever. And he keeps walking. And that's when he passes by the bully. Not the bully, sorry. I mean, basically, he's the bully. He passes by the guy. And the guy, like, turns his head as Brian is walking by. And Brian in his head is like, oh, no. So, yeah, the guy now knows that he is going in the other direction. And Brian's thinking to himself, okay, maybe this guy knows where my last period class is, but maybe he doesn't know all the ways to walk there. Maybe he thinks I'm just taking a different route to walk there. But Brian, in the corner of his eye, in the reflection of his phone, when he turns the corner, and all those things combined, he notices that there's a guy that is similarly shaped and looks similar to the guy in class that is now walking behind him. At this point, Brian is convinced that the guy is following him. So at this point, Brian knows it's too late, and he just starts booking it. He's got a heavy backpack on, but Brian is just like, he's got his flight or fight instincts firing up. He just starts sprinting because he sees the door. And he pushes open the door, and he runs down the stairs, and when he makes a left to start running down the street towards his house, going to be a 20-minute walk or probably like 15-minute run for him, as he turns the corner, he sees the kid opening the door, booking it for him as well. Yes, his suspicions were correct. This kid was chasing him down. So Brian is like, okay. As he's first of all, he's panicking a little bit. So he's just running. He's running autopilot in the direction of his house. He knows he has 15 minutes to go. He needs to cross some roads. He needs to do a lot of stuff. It is going to be complicated, but he's thinking to himself, this kid isn't going to follow me all the way for 15 minutes. Like, surely he'll give up and just try again tomorrow, because honestly, that would make the most sense logically. Like, you're not going to chase this kid down forever. Instead, you just wait till tomorrow when he can't skip class again and just do it again, right? Just repeat the pattern. However, this kid was not thinking logically. The guy was just sprinting after Brian as well. And the bad thing is, while Brian had some space on him, and also Brian knew where he was going and the guy was just following Brian, so Brian had those two advantages. Unfortunately, the distance between them was starting to shrink as the guy behind him was fairly fast and also didn't have a heavy backpack on him. A heavy backpack on him, which really did slow Brian down. So at this point, Brian is starting to realize that this guy's going to catch up to him if he's not careful. And also Brian starts to realize this kid's going to follow me all the way. He's going to follow me like all the way home, and then he'll know where I live too, which Brian doesn't know to what extent this kid is going to go to make his life a living hell, quote unquote, right? So Brian is sprinting and he's like, or running, right? He's not going to sprint and then die and just keel over and be like, okay, I'm out of energy, beat me up now. So he's running, and Brian knows that he can't be running straight home. So instead, he takes a little bit of a detour, and he's running, and this kid is behind him. And he knows that there's like 10 seconds of space in between them. If they're both running at slightly different speeds, about 10 seconds of Brian's running of speed. That distance is going to be gone within 5 or less minutes to Brian's eyeball calculations. Unless this guy starts sprinting faster or Brian starts going slower, it's going to be roughly less than 5 minutes before that distance is like surpassed. So Brian realizes he needs to figure out something, and fast. Brian starts heading up towards a corner. So there's a corner in the road, and it's like it goes both ways. So it's basically you go to the end of the street, it turns left, and then right away there's like a bunch of different pathways or whatever. So Brian runs down the street, makes a left, and he knows what he needs to do. He immediately jumps, like he just immediately, as soon as he turns, well, he gives it a second so that the guy can't see him do this, but he immediately turns and like dives into one of the bushes. And after that, stops moving. Is as silent as humanly possible. And he hears the guy run by the bushes, right? Here's the guy, here's the guy running by the bushes. And the guy stops. And Brian's like, oh no. Because this guy, if he was smart, would have realized that Brian could not have outran him. Because sure, it like turns again and he could have ran down there. But that would have taken so much longer, and Brian would have had to bolt, like sprinted it. And reasonably, Brian did not have the energy to do this. But the kid wasn't smart enough to realize that Brian was probably just hiding in the bushes or something. So Brian hears this kid cursing and being like, God damn it, like, how'd this kid get away? I'll just see him tomorrow. Right, stuff like that. And while Brian was starting to feel really good that he outsmarted this kid and he got away from him, Brian's heart also sank a little bit when this kid says, I'll just see him tomorrow. Because Brian knew this kid would seriously just see him tomorrow. Like, that's honestly, like, there's nothing he can do about it. This kid will just come after him again and again and again, and that's just kind of how it's going to go. So Brian went back home. He waited like half an hour in the bushes. Like, he went on his phone a little bit, but he was like, I'm not risking him like waiting out there. I'm not risking literally anything at this point. So Brian eventually gets out of the bushes and he walks home, and it's a pretty bad night because he's just thinking about this is his life. He gets into school the next day. He's sitting in the back of the classroom because he's like, it doesn't matter. This kid's not going to fight me in class. Like, I don't care. I'm just accepting my fate at this point. Brian can't kind of come to the conclusion that he's just going to accept. He's going to face whatever this kid wants to do to him. And worst comes to worst, right? But when he's sitting in class, this kid nor his girlfriend, they don't come in. And they don't come in that day. They don't come in the next day. They're gone for the week. And then they're not there the next day. And they're gone. Those kids are no longer at school. So eventually, weeks later, Brian eventually asks around because he's curious. He wants to know what's going on. And he has some people that he's kind of friendly with. So he sits down with one at lunch, and this guy's also in his class. He's like, hey, do you know where the guy and the girl are? You know, the one that are always like making out in the back. They're like, oh, dude, you didn't hear? Yeah, they got expelled from the school. Apparently, they got caught doing stuff so often that they were on super thin ice, and then very recently they got caught again, and yeah, they're out.